Hello, good evening, everyone. You're welcome to day 24 of 30 days of real estate content in Nigeria. It's been 23 days now before today that I've been educating you on different aspects of real estate in Nigeria, and I've done that quite a lot. Spoken on the different aspects of real estate, spoken on land banking, property development, what have you. I've spoken on types of titles, how to avoid real estate scams, how to detect real estate scams. And yesterday I started talking on landlord and tenant laws in Lagos, the Lagos State Landlord and Tenant Law. And I spoke on quite some number of things. You can watch it here on my Facebook page, or you can rush over to my YouTube page where you're going to get more about what I spoke on the Lagos State Landlord and Tenant Law. Today, I want to quickly round up on the Lagos State Landlord and Tenant Law, and this is going to be valuable to both landlords and tenants. I spoke yesterday about not paying rent in advance 2, 3, 4 years, how the law prohibits it, and it's a crime that is liable to 100,000 naira fine or 3 months imprisonment. I spoke about obligations of the tenant, obligation of the landlord, obligations also in respect to service charge and security deposit, what should be included in a payment receipt, and quite a number of things. So today I just want to continue speaking on obligations of a landlord, but much more important in relation to a commercial property. Then I'll touch some other things and we'll call it a day. I'll touch some other things. So another thing you need to know is that now the Lagos State Landlord and Tenant Law is not just related to residential property, it's also related to commercial property. And the law imposes some duties on a landlord. And failure to carry out those duties or engaging in some acts that are against the law will lead to the landlord being requested or demanded to pay compensation to their tenant, especially now where it is in a commercial property. So there are some circumstances in which if a landlord does certain things, he will be liable to paying compensation to the tenant. Is where the landlord prevents the tenant from accessing their business premises. So it's a business, is a commercial space, and the landlord now prevents, maybe because the tenant has not paid rent or for one reason he locks maybe the access gate to the business premises. That is a wrong act that will require that he pays compensation to the tenant. Beyond that, there may be also some things that the landlord will do that will alter the flow of customers. Maybe he locks the gate to, maybe he locks the door, or anything that just alters the flow of customers to the premises of his tenant in a commercial place is wrong, and it is something that the law imposes that he has to pay compensation to the tenant. And the third thing is failing to remove any disruption. So if there's any disruption or anything within the business premises that now affects the business of the tenant, yes, and leads to their loss, profit loss, like business loss, business loss. And such business loss is attributable to the fact that the landlord did not remove a disruption in the trading space, in the commercial space. The law imposes on the landlord to pay compensation to the tenant. And another one is where there's a breakdown of equipment. Maybe there's a generator, maybe there's a plant, and such is under the care of the landlord, and the landlord did not take care of it. And it's now the fact that it's not taking care of leads to a loss incurred by the tenant. The landlord will be liable, right? And the last but not the least instance in which the landlord will be liable to pay a compensation to the tenant in a commercial premises is where the landlord fails to maintain the exterior part of the business premises. It does not maintain the common part well. It does not repaint the premises after the tenant has notified him of such. If he fails to do it, he is liable to pay a compensation to the tenant. So that's basically some of the obligations that a landlord owes generally to a tenant, and if he engages in any act, when I say he, it could be a landlady, but if there's any engagement in any act that was stated here, the law imposes on the landlord a duty to pay compensation to the tenant for such. Now, let's talk about a very generally known topic, which is quit notice. Quit notice. So, what does the law say about quit notice? So, generally, you need to know that under the law, what a quit notice is a notice released by the landlord or his agent informing the tenant that at a specified time they must move out of the premises to another one. That at a specified time they must move out of that premises to another one. Contrary to what some tenants think, it is not when your rent expires that they are now to give you quit notice. No. So here's what the law says. There are 4 kinds of tenants under the Lagos State landlord and tenant law. There's a monthly tenant. The law states that you must give that month, that a monthly tenant is one who pays rent every month. You need to give such tenant at least 1 month notice to quit the property before such notice can be said to be valid. If the tenant is a quarterly tenant, so the tenancy lasts for 3 months at once, you must give the tenant at least 3 months notice on or before the eve of 3 months. So let's say the tenancy is expiring like 31st of March. You ought to have given the tenant a notice on or before December 31, 2025, assuming the tenancy is expiring 31st of March 2026. So at least 3 months notice for it to be valid under law. If the tenant is a half-yearly tenant, right, it's 6 months. The law also stipulates that you must give at least 3 months, at least 3-4 months. While if the tenant is a yearly tenant, 1 year, you must give at least 6 months. So if the tenancy is expiring 31st March 2026, you ought to have given them the notice on or before September 30, 2025. Any quit notice issued after that is invalid, is void. So it's very important that both the landlord and tenant know it. And if the notice is valid and after the notice expires, the tenant is still there, the landlord now has the right to issue, whether through ideally through his lawyer, notice of owner's intention to recover possession. Remember I said yesterday, the landlord does not have the unilateral power to just eject a tenant, kick them out, open the roof and allow rain falling, or lock the apartment that the tenant cannot access it. No, the law frowns against self-help and is punishable under the law. So the question now is that, as a landlord, how can you serve notices validly? Now, it could be you, the landlord, it could be your agent, it could be your lawyer, it could be in a residential or business premises. There are few ways. Number one, you can serve the tenant personally in a residential, personally. The second way you can do it is you can give it to an adult that is living in the same residential premises where your tenant is. So you can give it to a neighbor as long as the person is an adult above 18. 3, a valid service of notice. You can send a courier to deliver the notice. It will be valid under law. And also, if you don't want to use any of that, you can paste the notice in a very visible place in the premises. It can be on the door of the tenant, it can be on the wall beside, or a very visible place. If you do any of those ones, it's a valid notice, quit notice that has been delivered to the tenant. But if it's in the business premises, you can also give the tenant personally, or you can also paste it in a place that is very conspicuous, at the business premises. So now, a few more things and we end. What are the legal grounds upon which the court can issue what we call an order for possession? Now, an order for possession is saying the term of the tenancy has come to an end and the landlord now wants to recover the possession, or there are circumstances that arise that require the tenant to leave the premises. So what are some of the grounds? There are four grounds upon which the law, when I say the law, I mean the court, can make. So one, when the tenant is in arrears of rent, the tenancy may be run from 1st January 2025 to 31st January 2025. By 1st January 2026, or let me say by 10th January 2026, the tenant has not renewed the rent. You're already in arrears of rent for like 10 days. That's a valid ground for you to be ejected, for the court to issue an order of possession to the landlord. The second ground is where you have breached a term in your tenancy agreement. So there are terms that you both agree in your tenancy agreement. If you as a tenant, you have breached those terms, maybe you altered the structure or the likes, you alter the structure without the consent of the landlord. That can be a ground for ejecting. And the third ground upon which that order for possession can be gotten is where the landlord requires it for personal use. Maybe the landlord wants to move into an apartment, or he wants a family friend or his children to come back. That's a valid ground upon which the court can issue an order. Say you, the tenant, leave the place. And last but not the least is where there are substantial repairs needed. Maybe the landlord wants to renovate the place. So it's a valid ground upon which the court can issue a notice to recover possession. In an office I worked in, it didn't even get to the court, right? But we just had to just move out because they issued a quit notice that they wanted to repair the place, and we knew that was a legal ground for us to leave, so we didn't have to get to court. But generally, every contractual agreement between a landlord and tenant is regulated by a landlord-tenant agreement. But there are still instances where the court can override that tenancy agreement and issue an order for possession. So where you as the tenant is using the property for immoral or illegal purposes, the court can override whatever is written in the tenancy agreement and issue an order of possession in favor of the landlord. And the second ground is where the property has been abandoned. So the question is, what is abandonment? It means where the tenancy has expired. So still using this example of January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2025. It expired at December 31, 2025. It has expired and you are not living in the apartment as a tenant. You have moved out, but it's still in your possession, right? And you have not given up possession. So your rent has expired, you have not packed up, or maybe you traveled. That is a ground upon which the court can override whatever is written in your tenancy agreement and grant possession to the landlord. The third ground is where the property is sound and unsafe. Maybe there are terrible cracks and such constitute a danger to human life, to human property. The court can give that order irrespective of what you have stated in your tenancy agreement. And last but not the least is where a person who is living with you in the apartment engages in an intolerable mistake which brings about a breach of the agreement. So those are the grounds upon which the court can issue an order for possession. Now, I want to end today on how to handle rent increase. The law frowns against arbitrary increase of rent. So let's say your landlord comes, you were paying a 5 million and the landlord just increases it arbitrarily to 10 million. There's a way you can challenge that in court as a tenant. Yes. So what is the procedure? So under the Lagos State Landlord and Tenant Law, so you go to the court and apply to the court asking them to issue an order stating that this rent increase, it is unreasonable. After that, the court will now inform the landlord that there's an application they've received on the unreasonability of the increase of your rent. And in the court, when the court matter starts and the court wants to give a judgment, there are factors that the court will take into consideration in giving a judgment. And you as the tenant should know that, because it will help your case, since you will be the one in this instance taking the landlord to the court. So the court will look at the general level of rent in the locality or a similar locality in order to do a comparative analysis. So your rent was maybe 5 million, and in the environment is still 5 million or max 6 million for 2 bedroom, but your landlord now increases it to 10 million. The court will know that looking at the surrounding circumstances, it is arbitrary. Also, the court will take into consideration the witnesses of testimonies, the evidence, or sorry, the testimonies of witnesses, sorry, the testimony of witnesses, the evidence of witnesses brought by the landlord and the tenant. The court will listen to both sides before coming to a decision, and the court will now take also into consideration any special circumstance in relation to the matter. If after taking into consideration everything, the court now realizes or comes to the conclusion that the rent increase is unreasonable, that rent can now be reduced to an amount that the court will state. So all in all, you just know that the landlord cannot eject you arbitrarily under the law without recourse to a court judgment. But that still does not mean you as a landlord, as a tenant, should be recalcitrant or give problem to your landlord, not at all. So let this knowledge guide you as a tenant or landlord in Lagos State. My name is John Olisa, and I'm the CEO of Red Diamond Properties Limited. We're a property development company here in Abuja. Recently, we launched our estate in Kujiyako Extension, Kuje Genesis Court. And with 200 square meters going for 1.5 million, you can build a 3 bedroom terrace duplex. With 300 square meters going for 2.2 million, you can build a 4 bedroom semi-detached duplex. With 400 square meters going for 3 million, you can build a 5 bedroom fully detached duplex. And with 1,000 square meters going for 7 million, you can build 6 units block of flat consisting of 1, 2, 3 bedroom duplexes, flats, 2 units each. And you can contact me for more information or for inquiries on +234 813 799 0792. I go again, +234 813 799 0792. I'll keep sharing value with you, educating you on real estate, because the more you know about how a thing works, the higher the likelihood for your success, the lower the likelihood for missing it. You can get this video here on Facebook, or I'll put it on my YouTube page. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Thank you so very much for joining me in day 24 of real estate content, real estate education. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow by God's grace. I'll be sharing so much more with you on real estate. Thank you so very much, and have a good evening. Bye.